Hi everyone, my name's Tim, and it's been a while. Today, I will be talking about what I got in the way of records in the last month. Hi, welcome back to Record Overload. My name is Tim, and what I am going to do today is I'm going to show you the records that came in the month of November. Now, why did I wait so long? Simple. Texas summer is way too hot for records. So I've got 5 records to show you, and let's get right to it. First record I'm going to show you today is by Jonah Ray. Now, you may know him best as part of Nerdist or as Jonah from the Netflix reboot of Mystery Science Theater 3000. What he did is decided to put out an EP of Weird Al cover songs. It's a 5-song EP. Now, what he did is he took them and he put them to punk music, which sounds good on the surface. But to me, I was kind of let down because what it ended up being is 1 or 2 verses of each song set to punk music, except for Eat It, which is this really weird acoustic version with, I kind of like it, but I am severely let down. I would recommend that no one buy it, except for those of us who are completionists when it comes to Weird Al. This copy came on white vinyl. It's from Asian Man Records. I will provide a link to the website in case you are interested. But like I said, unless you are an absolute completionist, I don't recommend it. The best part of the record is that there is an etching on the back that is reminiscent of the UHF logo, except where it had UHF in the original, it just shows RAY. But otherwise, I say it's a pass. Next up, I've got an album that I've been looking for a few months. It's early Jesus music, called The Holy Ghost Reception Committee number 9, Songs for Liturgical Worship. Now, this came out originally in either the late 60s or early 70s, but back a few years ago, a company in New Jersey called Void Records decided to repress this. This is the repressing. Now, let me give you a few words about what this album is all about. Like I said, this is early Jesus music where they were just kind of experimenting and didn't really have a framework to go off of, which is not a bad thing. You know, they were establishing a genre at that time. So what they did, this is mostly folk rock kind of sounding, except the instruments are pulled way back. It sounds really homebrewed. The vocals are way up front. And the tunes themselves are actually kind of infectious and fun to listen to. It's definitely a nice little snapshot into the beginnings of a movement, religious-based rock and roll music. And since I am a fan of the history of that kind of thing, I decided I'd grab it and see what it was like. And I was pleasantly surprised. Now, I had to go to Norway, or actually send away to Norway to get my copy. But I think it was well worth a 3-week wait. Now, it's not going to be top shelf necessarily, but I will pull it out probably 2 or 3 times a year and give it a good listen. Thirdly, we have a record that I helped fund on a Kickstarter. It's by TVs Kyle, which some of you may know from the Dr. Demento show. Others may recognize the name from being involved with Mighty Magiswords on Cartoon Network. This is a comedy album, of course, put out on Needle Juice Records. It's called Commodore Touchdown. And it has a few good songs on it. The Horseman 1, Consider My Goat, Dennis Sit Down, Officer Free Throw is a complete and utter jam. I absolutely love it. Rock in My Face is really good. There are some that I kind of thought fell a little flat too, like Door Table. Bomb Explosion just feels like filler to me. Next Level Chicken is really, really good. So really it comes on blue splatter vinyl here. It's kind of really nice, the blue splatter vinyl here, and the pressing itself is real nice, and it's another one from Needle Juice Records. And you know, I've got several albums by Needle Juice, and this is just one of them that I helped fund. And I'm not going to say it's the best. I pull it out maybe 6 or 7 times a year and listen to it. Next up are two of my absolute favorites. Of course, I saved the best for last. First one, They Might Be Giants decided to do an anniversary release of their first album, affectionately known to their fans as the Pink Album. And being They Might Be Giants, they decided to release it as the 33 and third year anniversary edition of their first album. It is, as I said, it's affectionately known as the Pink Album. And going on that, what do you think color the record is? Let's pull it out and find out, shall we? Doo-doo-doo. And of course, it is brilliant neon pink. Now this album, I bought it on cassette originally back in, I think, 1990, and it hooked me. At the time, they were just getting going. I think Lincoln had just come out, and I really, really got into this record. Now, being as it was They Might Be Giants, and this was their first record, nobody knew if they were going to last beyond, say, 1 or 2 records. I mean, at the time it was 2. But here they are, good grief, going on 35 years later, and they're still going strong. As a matter of fact, they are doing what's turning into a completely sold out tour for the album Flood, which they will be playing back to back later on this year and next year. Well, all of next year, actually, through 2020. And literally all of the dates are sold out that I could find. This set the tone for literally everything they've done since then. And at the time, it was simply no more than John Flansburgh and John Linnell doing all the music on their own. They didn't have a full band until their 4th album, John Henry. And it is an outstanding addition to their collection. I mean, it was their first record, and it's one of their best. I would say go to their website and purchase this record. Lastly, we have a band I'd never heard of until a few months ago called Levitation Room with their newest album, Headspace, on Greenway Records. Trying to explain what Levitation Room sounds like? Well, see my Bob Ross shirt? That's what it sounds like. They sound kind of spacey. They describe themselves as psych rock and folk roots rock, which is kind of underselling their sound, in my opinion. To me, they sound like everything good about the latter half of the 60s. They pretty much incorporate every sound from surf rock to the California sound to Motown to the Memphis sound to psych rock to prog to just straight up folk and acoustic rock into one gorgeous sound. From really super clean guitars to really, really heavily fuzz tone guitars, really heavily psychedelic distorted guitars. And the keyboards are fantastic on this album as well. The cleanest electric piano I have heard in years. The cleanest B3 sounding organ I have heard in years. And everything is capped off by these really dreamy, airy, ethereal vocals. And I was on Greenway Records website, and I saw this, and I saw it was on pre-order, so I went to Spotify, and luckily it was already up on Spotify, so I thought I'd give it a listen. And from the first few notes of I was kind of hooked, but I kept listening. And I don't normally buy something on first listen. I kind of let it gestate a little bit and listen to it over and over just before I decide whether or not I'm going to spend money on something, just because I don't necessarily know whether I'll like it somewhere down the road. But this album, I kept coming back to over and over. I was drawn in by the first cut, which is Mr. Polydactyl Cat. And then there's another one that caught me, is Ooh Child on the first side, which is not the one that you think it is. It's not Ooh Child, Things Are Gonna Get Easier. It's a song that they wrote themselves. It's really, really good, and it's kind of Motown-y. And on side 2, it opens with an instrumental that kind of reminds me of The Doors meet the Grateful Dead, called Headspace. And then my absolute favorite song on the entire album is a nice little acoustic thing called Friends. It is something that I would, again, listen to on repeat. But if you're into any kind of 60s sounding music or prog or anything psychedelic, then I suggest listening to these guys. Now, the vocalist, in my best description, sounds most like the lead singer for the 3 O'Clock back in the 80s. So it's kind of that Paisley Underground sound. This is their first album on record. They've done 4 other projects. Well, 4 projects in total. And it comes on nice blue vinyl, as you see. And I'm going to say, if there's one album out of these that you want to get, well, I have 2 recommendations. One is going to be the They Might Be Giants record that I mentioned earlier. And the other is going to be this record right here. If you like what you see and you want to see more of this type of content, please give me a like down in the bottom and give me a comment as well. And if you really like the channel, feel free to subscribe and hit the little bell to be notified as to when I will be uploading future videos. And I will see you again soon.